Good evening, everybody. Eva, I'm going to invite you to co-host. How are you? Thank you for joining, everybody. We're just going to kind of hang out for a minute and wait for all of our great friends here on Twitter and those who we haven't met before to join this space. So we're just going to give it just a quick couple of seconds to join. Thank you, everybody. I already have a direct message. Let's see. So great to see you all. We really love that this space has been, we just hit a really great stride in just our first space. And I think we're going to have another fantastic conversation tonight.
I was just saying hi.
Hi, Aisha.
Hello.
Great to see you. Thanks for joining.
Good to see you too. Yeah, I've been a little under the weather the last couple of days.
I'm sorry to hear that. Well, hang out and drink tea or whatever's going on over
Drink
there.
tea. It's not COVID. We are okay.
Yay.
Just a couple of antibiotics and a lot of body aches, and we're all right.
I'm sorry. Hang in. The good news about
That's
bacterial
okay.
infections is that we can take antibiotics. I mean, there's a good
Thank
side
God.
to it, right?
Thank God for scientists who know what they're doing.
I'm telling you, my doctor hates it when I say, well, it's bacterial. I get an antibiotic. And he's like, you really look forward to this too much. I'm like, listen, I'm sorry. But when you're like, give it a couple weeks, I'm like, I do not have to.
No, it really depends. It really depends. I used to be so like dependent upon medication. And when I was younger, because I'd be like, oh, I have an exam or I have a race or, like training, I've got to get rid of this. I can't do it.
Yes.
I think all of my major races, anytime I get to nationals, or I think I was actually healthy for the world record attempt, the Guinness.
Happy days. We take our wins when we can get them.
We love it. Look at everyone trickling in. Hello.
Yes. We have, wait, did we freeze? Everyone is now muted. Okay, somebody.
Sorry, I did that by accident.
I know, I'm like, am I going to make
Welcome to our space.
Welcome, everybody. We see a lot of familiar faces. We are so happy that you have chosen to join us again for episode 2 of Women in Medicine here on Twitter Spaces. And tonight we're going to discuss the Great Resignation, which of course, as many of you know, because some of you are participating in that Great Resignation, but specifically in the world of medicine, certainly we have seen the Great Resignation. We know that during COVID-19, women have disproportionately left the workforce, regardless of what discipline that they are in professionally. But certainly in the space of healthcare, it's been devastating relative to losing not only men and women in healthcare, but certainly women disproportionately impacted due to children and sometimes caring for older parents. So welcome you. I would just like to set the table for this evening's discussion, and then I will hand us over to my beautiful co-hosts here once again. We want to welcome you. This discussion is not just a place that we're trying to create for people who are experiencing this and certainly have felt the impacts and bring their own experiences to the table to speak. We welcome women and men both to join this evening's discussion, as we know that all of you have been impacted. To share a little bit about some statistics relative to what women do bring to the table in medicine. We're going to talk about gender equity issues in medicine, and then we're going to just allow all of you to come join the discussion. I would say that if we don't recognize you, and what I mean by that is if your profile picture is a cat or a car, you're welcome to join the conversation, but I would simply ask that you maybe send me a back channel. My DMs are open, and just let me know who you are and what you would like to bring to the conversation so that we can keep this space safe. That does not mean we all have to agree. We just want it to be respectful. And we know that many of you that are in health are experiencing the pain and the impact, especially during COVID, although much of what we're going to talk about tonight isn't necessarily COVID specific. We were having these challenges indeed prior to the pandemic. So on that note, I would like to introduce Eve, and then Dr. Bloomgarden, if you would like to hand that over to your co-host, you're welcome to, but I'm joined again by the lovely Dr. Bloomgarden, who is an endocrinologist and who has become a dear friend. And so Eve, I'd like to hand it to you, and then you're welcome to hand the baton over as we kick off this evening. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, for the space. You can call me Eve. Everyone here can call me Eve inside this space. Let's have a really a conversation that's personalized and that's intimate, but that really covers a lot of ground here. I'm Eve Bloomgarden. I am part of the leadership team for Women in Medicine and the co-host here for our spaces. And tonight we wanted to set the stage by talking about the Great Resignation, which is the catchy term for the loss of the healthcare workforce, but really it's not about healthcare. This is happening across the board in multiple industries. But we wanted to really talk about some of the drivers. We wanted to see what everyone's experience was, and more importantly, or most importantly, we wanted to talk about solutions to this problem because the urgency is palpable. I think we can all appreciate that, regardless of where we stand in the healthcare participation spectrum, whether we're delivering it or receiving it. And I wanted to first introduce my co-host for the evening, Dr. Bayani, and she is going to introduce the topic in a little bit more detail and get us started, and then we will pick it up and hope to have a good conversation here.
Great. I'm so excited to be here with all of you tonight. I'm just for full disclosure, I'm sort of a newbie on Twitter Spaces. So just bear with me if I make any errors, but I'm really excited to be here today. I'm an internal medicine physician at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, and gender equity is a really big passion of mine. So what I wanted to just sort of set the stage in just a really short amount is just to talk a little bit about the fact that in terms of our medical students, we've reached near parity for gender parity for men and women entering medical school. And what we're seeing is that as women are progressing in leadership roles, that number is down to 25% for women that are full professors and down to like about 8% that are deans and chairs. And so when we think about that, we want to sort of think really about why this is important, because it's always really important to think about what is why do we care about this? And, one of the things is that we need to think about not just recruiting our women, but we need to think about retaining them. And we need to think about retaining them because women will make up a large part of the workforce. And we want them to be those change agents, right? We want them to be in positions to be role models because if you can see it, you can be it. We want them to be in those leadership roles because then they can help to really make changes in the system, make changes in policies and procedures. They can help with making those changes in climate and culture from the top down. And then also, in terms of a lot of data has come out in terms of patient outcome data and the inpatient side, outpatient side, surgical outcomes, and women are doing really well in all of those areas. And so again, in terms of the why, I think we need to sort of set the stage and think about this as we're thinking about all of those other sort of areas of gender inequity and that we're going to be talking about tonight. So I'm going to stop here and sort of hand it over to our moderator.
Thank you so much. And by the way, I would like to welcome Shika to this conversation as you were with us last week. Do you have any thoughts about our space from last week or any thoughts as we talk about the Great Resignation this evening, and then to invite the audience to participate as well?
Yeah, thanks so much, Stephanie, and thanks again for helping us host another great space. I just want to welcome everybody here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Shika Jain. I'm a medical oncologist. I'm also the founder of the nonprofit Women in Medicine and the chair of the Women in Medicine Summit. And the Great Resignation, as you heard both Rocky and Eve talk about, is a huge problem across the board, and it's really becoming a problem in medicine. And what we're seeing is that it's directly impacting patient care. So at the end of the day, this is something that affects everyone, whether you're in medicine or not. And so I'm glad that we have the space to talk, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation today.
Thank you so much. And so, Eve, as we start to kick off this conversation, I think what I wanted to ask you, because we've had a lot of discussions about this subject prior to tonight's space. Eve, how are you thinking about your own journey as a woman in medicine, as a physician, as an endocrinologist, some of the challenges you have faced in your history in medicine, and how you're kind of looking in the future? And do you see anything in front of us that looks like hope or possibility and maybe some solutions? And again, I want to encourage the audience. You are welcome. We want you to join this conversation and share with us your experiences, any thoughts you're having, and how you're looking at the Great Resignation, and how we can encourage, during a very challenging time, to say the least, in medicine, how we can encourage people who have an interest in medicine to come join the family, and kind of why, and help people understand why women are so important in medicine. Thank you.
Yeah, so I really appreciate that question. And I kind of, the burnout in healthcare is not new. In fact, it was a really big problem before the pandemic. But what's happened over the last 2 years is we've just seen this exacerbation of pre-existing inequities. We've seen a widening of the gender gap when it comes to promotion, leadership, when it comes to pay, when it comes to retention in the workforce. And this has real world consequences, because what that means when we, with women to make up 50% of the healthcare workforce, and we are seeing, up to 500,000 workers in healthcare, have left the workforce already. And we know that there's a lot more who are currently sitting on the fence, that, healthcare can't keep up with that. I mean, we always run, we know that we didn't have enough redundancy in the system and enough staff support and enough of really any sort of support for our day-to-day endeavors pre-COVID. And over the last 2 years, it's gotten worse and worse. And I think the urgency of trying to figure out solutions is palpable. And I think what we're trying to do in Women in Medicine is we're trying to promote awareness, we're trying to promote research, mentorship, we're trying to encourage allyship to kind of join our cause so that we have our voices have power. But I think we also there's nothing great about the Great Resignation. I mean, I think it is an opportunity potentially for us to take a hard look at what's going on in healthcare. And it may be that we're getting to a tipping point where we can finally make some changes, because we've all been kind of bitching and moaning about wanting change for a really long time. I know I have, and I think, as someone who actually, I resigned from my job during the last year and I'm starting a new one, but there's a lot of push out. It's not a leaky pipeline, really. It's a forcefully being pushed out, whether it's from the way that the healthcare system was built, or the way that our reimbursement system is designed, or just the hours that we're putting in the setting, especially, with caregiving responsibilities. I mean, I think the lack of flexibility, the lack of, just value and empathy that is happening right now in our current workplace is really needs to be addressed. And so my optimism lies in the fact that we've all kind of come together, and I hear stories from so many people, and I hear kind of the same themes coming out in a lot of different platforms and venues and conversations. So I think the optimism is centered on the fact that people are even more motivated than before, because we had, we are the people that have gotten us through the pandemic, right? And so to then retake away our autonomy, stability, and to take away kind of our power as change agents is sitting very very poorly with us right now. My optimism really does not mean that I'm optimistic that things are already in motion, meaning like I think we have to work for it. And I think that there's a lot of work to really be done still, and we need to really all stand up together and just really demand change. Because the truth of the matter is, when I was sitting and thinking, am I going to be doing this job, sitting in a room, seeing a patient every 20 minutes, being yelled at for charting instead of seeing my kids and spending time with them, I can't imagine that going on for many, many more years. And I'm hearing that from just too many people, that I think we need to really demand change and then be the agents of change. So I could talk forever about this, but I will not. I would like to see what others have to say on this topic, and also just I invite people to share their stories of how the pandemic has affected kind of their career trajectory, and what kind of solutions everyone are thinking are on the table, and what we could do together.
Yeah, thank you, Eva. Rocky, I'm going to be asking you that same question, but I would like to move to a speaker quickly, if I may. Revolution has joined the discussion. He is not actually a healthcare professional, but I think he has some comments that he wanted to make. And then, Rocky, I will ask you the same question, and then we will move to our next speaker, who has requested to speak at Uninhibited Podcast. So if you can hang out with us, we'd like to do it. And then, or Revolution, welcome to the conversation. Thanks for joining.
Well, Stephanie, look, there are three amazing doctors up here. There's a lot of amazing doctors, and I know quite a few of them in the audience. But I'm going to just be able to take about 15 seconds and send my love to you, Stephanie, to Eve, to Natalia, and Shika. And no need to talk about what I'm going through, but if you scroll through my timeline and I tell you how amazing these doctors are, that they have taken me in and started to work with them around some of the other issues that we're concerned with. But I kind of wanted to just jump into this because it really makes me sad that we have a room like this in a certain way, because just at the time when women are breaking in and taking, medicine by storm, we're seeing women, leave in droves, and in healthcare in general and in nursing, right? I mean, doctors have, the 10,000-foot view, the protective factor, and we're seeing nurses and suicide and all of these things. But when we're seeing women in medicine, especially doctors, guess what, folks? Women are still going to be paid less in 2025. It's just going to be true. It's not going to happen overnight. And so it does make me sad to see that we're in this place. But what does really make me happy is that these discussions are coming, and that what we can do as men, and I'm not a healthcare professional, but I'm a pretty smart guy and I know a lot about this stuff, is that you talk about, Eve, you talk about allyship. I've been working in the social justice, racial equity space for going on like 15 years now, and an activist in the environmental space for probably close to 40. And I am a co-conspirator when I do something. If I put into it, I am actively working against the systems that, the patriarchy. Look, the white lab coat, white guy patriarchy, I'm not sure. And you guys can answer this. I would love if you did, but you don't have to. But, if I were starting medicine from the ground up, when we've got 1,000 years of men running medicine, it just doesn't look like the best foundation to me. I don't think men have proved themselves well over 1,000 years of modern medicine, or 300 years, or 200 years, or 50 years. And so if I were starting over, I'd be like, right, dudes, you need to sit down for a while and just listen. And that's what I want to say to all the men here. I don't care how lofty you are, how
Revolution, did
I lose you?
I I don't know why everybody got muted. I apologize.
No,
Anyway,
someone hit the all mute button. That's all.
That's
You're
what I
good.
Well, that's okay, because it was good timing, because I don't want to hog up the space, but I just love all of you. And listen, guys, just listen. Sit on your freaking hands. Don't raise your hands. You can tonight, but I mean, listen. It's about listening. Leadership used to be being bossy. Now leadership is about, wow, I didn't even notice what a leader there were because they listen. I love all of you. You're doing great work. However I can help, I'm going to be there, and I support all of you.
Thank you, Revolution. I always appreciate your kindness and your thoughtfulness as you approach so many subjects here on Twitter, and certainly in this space. We really genuinely appreciate your support. And then what I'd love to do is, Rucky, I'd love to ask you the same question really quickly in terms of how are you looking at the future of medicine and what do you think needs to happen? And then following that, I will ask Uninhibited Podcast to join our conversation as we continue.
Yeah. So, I think one of the things that, as I sort of go through this space, is that we have a lot of the data, and I agree that, we need to have these discussions to sort of make people aware that these issues exist. But now I think we need to, as Dr. Bloomgarden sort of said earlier, as Eve said earlier, is that we need to move from the discussions space to like trying to really take steps. And I think one of them is really engaging our male allies. And why I think that's a really key point is that men are still in those majority leadership roles, right? And we need them to be helping us create those changes in policies and procedures, because even though as individuals we can we have agency to sort of make changes within our within our sphere of influence, we need those broader changes to really make a bigger impact on the larger organization level. So I think, I'm optimistic in the sense that I think there are more men that are sort of, more interested in listening and being part of the conversation and really being part of taking those next steps.
I appreciate that. And to the Uninhibited Podcast speaker, would you accept my deepest apologies, as we have a guest that wanted to join the conversation, but he has to leave, and I normally don't do that, but if it would be okay with you.
No problem.
Thank you. I really appreciate Dr. Nero Fourier, you joined us this evening, and it sounds like you just have a small window. And so we would love to invite you to the conversation and appreciate everybody's graciousness as we just moved out of order. Thank you.
Oh, of course. Yeah, no, and I'll be really quick as well, because I definitely want to make sure to give platform to others as well. But I think more of it is just like kind of a message to a lot of allies that are listening in chat as well, that, this whole concept of like longitudinal stability within, gender equity is something that we have a very wonderful opportunity here to really push forward, ensuring that we're fostering mentorship, allyship, and also just in general accountability. I think the accountability facet is something that we can still very much drastically improve upon. And it's up to very much, it takes a village in this case to really like right the wrongs of many of these situations. And I think that right now we have that opportunity from this pandemic to obviously elucidate a lot of the inequities that we see right here more so than ever, and bring it forward in a lot of the systems and fix that. So it's my plea to everyone here, again, those who are working in the system, those who are coming into the system, or those who are retiring from the system, you still have a word to say, and it makes a difference in all schemas in this case right here. So that is the only thing I will want to leave. And I hope that everyone takes a second to really listen to all these wonderful ladies. And I bid you, everyone, a wonderful night.
Thank you. Eve, did you want to say anything?
Yes,
to
thank you. It's like I planted you in this space, but I didn't to say that. I mean, maybe I did. But I posted into the space here a link to our Male Inclusive Leadership Allyship Program, which is an amazing course that is a CME program that we're offering. I'm not going to sell anyone here on anything here. That's not why we're in this space. But I would encourage everyone to take a look at what we're offering, because it is it's a way to kind of show people and to teach the skills of how to be an ally to really advance what we're advocating for. And it's because it's nothing that we really learn, and it's not intuitive. It's skills that need to be taught. And so this is a really unique program that has gotten a lot of excitement from healthcare adjacent, healthcare tech, pharma, business, but it would be amazing to have some doctors in the space as well, because we really need our colleagues' voices at the table.
Eve, thank you. I really appreciate that. And now, Uninhibited Podcast, please join the conversation. And thank you again for your graciousness as we went out of order. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. So my name's Mukunda Abdul Baki. I'm a practicing OBGYN and in rural southwestern Virginia. And I've been doing that for more than 15 years. And I've been in private practice, have had hospitals, approach me or corporate entities approach on trying to buy the practice or get me to work for them. And I haven't done it up until now. There's so many different things contributing to burnout. And as I told my friend, I've been hesitant to use the word burnout, but I think I'm just in the pre-burnout phrase, because I said for me to continue doing things exactly the way I've been doing it for the next year or so, like that would, I could tell in the distance that would contribute to burnout. There's some stuff within rural healthcare and Medicaid payment that, I think the financial aspects are probably the worst part about what's hidden in medicine, as far as equity for women and for people of color. We don't teach it in residency. We don't talk about finances. And then, I'll just give you an example. One of the reasons why I'm leaving my own private practice that I've loved for 15 years is because my reimbursement from Medicaid has almost not changed. It's remained flat. My kids' private school, the tuition goes up 5 to 10% every year. My reimbursement from Medicaid does not go up. It does not meet, there's no cost of living rise. And it gets to be this cycle where it's almost, it's a like it's like the powers that be want the thing to fail because they're not funding the programs adequately enough to attract good doctors. And so then we kind of wonder why it's, there's so much death and despair within the rural communities. I can tell you that even for like COVID, which is not something that I'm treating, but our rural hospital, I would say that if you get admitted with COVID, you have like a 50% chance of death. Like there's not as many survivors as there should be. There's just so much division in our country, within healthcare between the haves and have-nots. And it's just become a battle that is kind of beginning to wear on me. And so for me, what I'm planning on doing to decrease my burnout is not completely the Great Resignation, but I'm going to just I'm going to just do locums, like pick and choose the work when I want to do it as my, needs go. But yeah, to continue to go on at the same level, at the same rate for another year or two would definitely be burnout for me. So that's my 2 cents as far as contributing, this perspectives from rural health.
Thank you so much for that perspective. And Eve and Rocky, do you have any thoughts about what you just heard?
Yes, I wanted to thank you for sharing that. I think what you brought up is really the heart of the matter here. And I'm excited to listen to your podcast too, because I don't think I subscribed to it until right now. But no, you're exactly right. What we're not capturing in the numbers when we look at the number of people that are who have left or who are part of the Great Resignation is the number of people who are planning to reduce their clinical FTEs or planning to pivot to do something else within the healthcare space. But really, the number of kind of patient facing hours is going down and down, and we're seeing this across the board with staff. If we have high staff turnover, not enough nurses, not enough medical assistants, not enough, it all trickles down, so that the healthcare experience that patients are going to have is going to be quite different. And I think until the business of healthcare or the Institute of Medicine, in particular, until there's a change that allows for the flexibility for us to care for ourselves and for us to really have more autonomy and really be able to guide the way that we want our workday to go, and the flexibility we need to live life and to practice medicine, I think we are going to have no really to cut back on hours. And of course we're going to do that. I mean, there's really no other way. If we want to stay afloat and we want to, we went into this because we're passionate about what we do. And I think it's really, there's a lot of gaslighting that happens where there's a lot of blaming of providers, of doctors, of nurses, for saying, well, you shouldn't leave because you're abandoning patients, or you can bend and bend and bend and bend, but like ultimately you bend something far enough they break. And I think that's what we're all kind of experiencing here. And your story is absolutely unique because it's you, but it's also not unique, meaning that I'm hearing the exact same words from so many. And I think we're not capturing that data, but it's why we're raising the alarm and why we have this space right now.
I'll just sort of add to a little bit of what you spoke about in terms of the have-nots and haves in terms of the patients that we take care of. So all of my clinical responsibilities are uh, precepting residents in their primary care clinic. So it's an underserved population. And it is, so heartbreaking on a day-to-day basis to sort of deal with, sort of the consequences that so many people in our nation have to deal with who are uninsured or underinsured. And I think that definitely adds to some of the burnout and, sort of that moral injury and some of those sort of feelings that we all have as physicians. And, being able to help when we can, and it hurts when we can't. So that's one area that I just sort of felt like I could relate to, even though I'm not doing rural medicine. And then the other aspect that you brought up, which I thought was really important, was this sort of the financial equity in terms of, gender equity, inequities in pay. And, it starts right from the get-go. So when physicians are straight out of training, even before you take into consideration experience and rank and age and all of that, it starts right from the beginning. And I, just as a personal experience, when I took my first job, I thought the contracts were standard. I didn't even ask for anything different. It was just sort of sign on the dotted line. And my husband was like, "You didn't ask for anything?" And I was like, "I didn't know I could." And so now I'm involved in a financial education lecture series for our house staff to sort of, help educate the men and the women on sort of these issues, because you're right. We don't learn about this in medical school. And I think we need to start, at least exposing our, physicians of, of the next generation to all these topics that are really important.
Shika, you're just throwing 100s. Did you want to add something to that in a response?
Yeah, I mean, I want to make sure I leave a lot of time for our other listeners and speakers to speak. Everything Rocky and Eve said is spot on. I mean, these inequities start from even pre us getting paid. Like, these inequities start from the level of medical school and even pre-meds. And it's really interesting. I actually posted something yesterday about harassment and about inequities and asking people to share stories. And the number, I mean, you guys should just check out the comments that are on that thread. These types of things are so deep-seated in our society and in even the way we raise our children and the way that society is set up, that it's going to take a lot of work to change these inequities. But my hope, just like, earlier, is that we use this pandemic as a watershed moment, and we realize these inequities are so deep-seated that we need to really disrupt and change the system, because we're not going to change it overnight. It's going to take time. People have been working on this for hundreds of years at this point, but now the conversation is happening in so many different spaces. Now is our moment to change things. But you're absolutely right. I mean, these inequities start way before we even start talking about them. So we need to really do a deep dive into how do we address these huge inequities that exist, because when you start off a job getting paid less, you're always going to get paid less. When you start off a job being seen as inferior, you're always going to be seen as inferior. There are ways to get around those barriers, but it's a huge climb. And I describe it as you're running up a hill, someone's pushing a bowling ball or a huge boulder down at you, while your colleagues are running up the hill at the same time as you, but they're able to pass you because they don't have this big pushing down at you that's already present. So we need to really address these inequities at their base, which is at the very beginning, and then we need to continue to address them as we move through our careers.
Thank you, Shika. And by the way, thank you for joining the conversation. I will be subscribing to your podcast as well, and you are welcome to hang out with us. In order, I would like to go next to Dr. Natalia. I said Atalia, sorry, it's been a long day. Dr. Natalia, followed by Manish, and then we will move to Yazan. And I'm hoping that I pronounced your name correctly. Dr. Natalia, thanks for joining the conversation. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, everybody. So I just wanted to briefly share my story. I actually resigned during the pandemic from full-time job I've had. And I can say, first thing I would like to say that females are definitely bringing a humanization point to healthcare that we provide. And as we see a lot more females go into usually male-dominated specialties such as critical care, cardiology, gastroenterology, surgery. And those females in male-dominated specialties are constantly abused and gaslighted. And which happened to me, I have been gaslighted during my fellowship. I have been gaslighted and mistreated during my job. And when the pandemic started, things that I was bringing to my leadership, and the leadership, of course, it's a male leadership, with no females in leadership in the group that I worked at, and everything was taken that I am creating a drama or and I'm an intensivist, so of course all those issues with connecting with families, connecting with all the videos that we had to do, all the iPad conversation, iPhone conversation that we had to do. So any kind of pro-patient advocacy that I was trying to do, or pro-family advocacy I was trying to do, it was all taken with negatively from my leadership. And eventually, when I was bringing aspects of problems with care that we were providing, I was literally gaslighted. Finally, I had to bring up one time issue that I feel like a female intensivist in our group are treated differently than male intensivists are being treated. And if a male intensivist yells or does something like that, it's always considered as power. If a female intensivist even raises a brow, it's already taken as, oh, she gave a look or something like that. So for females, definitely there are different standards, and it became so toxic for me that I realized that I had to leave. So I'm actually doing and per diem jobs right now, and I choose where to go, and if I feel uncomfortable where I am going, I don't go there anymore. And I can say, as a local physician, because there is usually a need in a place, I am definitely treated differently. But in the last few weeks, I've been reached out by my hospitalist friends, female friends, and my intensivist friends who remain in the same group. And they reached out and they asked me to guide them through the process of leaving and getting into locum jobs and other like this kind of per diem opportunities that I'm doing. And basically, females just feel like leaving, like they are apathetic, they are very discouraged by the way they're being treated, and toxic. The environment remains toxic, especially, as I said, in a male dominated specialty where you may be you and another woman and the rest of the group are males, and they definitely put you to cover the gaps, to close the holes that they haven't scheduled. They always try to gaslight you. And
Dr. Natalia,
yeah,
I'm so sorry. I was just going to say, we have so many speakers. I think what I
sure,
wanted to
definitely.
do, no, it's good. I think that what I wanted to say, just as I'm listening to you, is that these are the stories that have got to be deemed completely unacceptable by every single healthcare professional, male, female, intensivist, nurse. I do not care what it is, but these are the unacceptable moments that we all need to understand, which is why allyship in medicine, men in medicine who hear these stories, who, by the way, who have seen this happen, oftentimes this happens in the wide open because there's not a shame associated with it. And so, Dr. Natalia, I hear you and I see you, and these stories are critical because we have no space for this. We don't have enough healthcare providers. I mean, not only is it unacceptable behavior, but we don't have enough healthcare providers to take care of the people we have in this country. And so to hear about these stories is just unacceptable. And Dr. Natalia, I'd love for you to please stay with us here on stage. I just wanted to quickly, and you're welcome to unmute again, I just wanted to quickly move to Manish, and then we have Yazan, followed by Elisa, and then we will go from there. So thank you very much for those comments, and it's horrible. It's horrifying to hear these stories. So Manish, would like to welcome you to the discussion this evening. Thank you for joining us again. It's nice to see you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I would, just like to pick it up from where Dr. Natalia left it up. Not only that, the women are forced to, they are quite, face of a hostile environment in the specialties which are predominantly male dominated. Another thing is that even the pressure during the days of graduations, somewhat women are, supposed to believe that, or mentally conditioned to go for the lesser paying specialties. We don't find women into the what is called the posh sciences like neurology, This is not because people simply because they don't want to upwork, but it is the discouraging environment that is being produced around them that they don't really go after those things, and this is really problematic. See, even when the industrialization started, women were always seen as inexpensive labor. They were always seen as an inexpensive substitute to the male labor, which always looked as uh, a lesser wages substitute. So this particular notion needs to go on, and even in the feminist movement, the things like equal wages is being regarded as something radical. I don't think so. It is radical. If you are working for the same time, you are giving the same output. It's nothing. There's nothing radical in asking for the same wages. I mean, you're not going to if the output is same, you need to pay the same. And I feel like looking at my female colleagues, they're more diligent usually than the male ones, and undoubtedly more humanistic approach they take. And this is not, this we see across the board in the different countries. This is not limited to, a particular country. We see this thing across the board. They're more humanistic, they are more dedicated towards, and they are more serious towards their duties rather than their male counterparts. Another thing is that if we see the pattern of, taking up the specialties, somewhere we will see where the wages are low, where the economical returns are lesser, we confine it to the women. Okay, women are confined to such specialties where the financial returns are quite less, and where the financial returns are high, it's predominantly male dominated. Still, women are picking up that grass, that they are breaking up the wall, but it's taking time. But I think so. This the one thing I will just disagree with Natalia, that they need not to if it's a hostile environment, they need not to leave that space. They'd rather have to occupy more and more space and tell this more men on their faces, we don't give up a damn, we don't give up
Yeah.
a damn.
And
So
Manish, you know what? I was just going to suggest we have so many people in the queue, and I want to thank you for joining this discussion this evening, and I want to thank you for your thoughts. And I can assure you that all of the women in medicine that are on this stage not only appreciate your support, but would love to see you out there speaking with colleagues, certainly some of your male colleagues, as these are things that you are experiencing and you are seeing. So I think you have a very important and strong voice, and I want to encourage you to use that voice. And so we thank you so much for those thoughts. Aisha, did you have something real quickly before I move to our next speaker that you wanted to add to this particular topic?
I think if we're changing the tone and going to a different aspect of the topic, there was something that was touched upon that it starts at the pre-med level. And as a non-traditional pre-med student, I just want to emphasize that part, that we as women definitely need to learn to speak up and be strong enough in the face of this patriarchal culture that seems to just like embed itself everywhere. I mean, the amounts of professors. Now, I know my worth, I know my brain, and I love that I know that much because I can show up, and I showed up to grad school right before it's Fashion Week now. So just a quick enlightenment. That is my other job. I do model full time, but also I'd show up for Fashion Week events and I'd be in class. And I think the best part of anything is when the guys in class really just thought I was a dumb blonde, basically. And I would be able to point them to the exact textbook page when they would get the questions wrong on the exams, and my grades would be way better than theirs. So please, for the love of God, we are women, but we are no lesser. Our brains still work. And I think that that's really important to emphasize at this specific moment, especially with everything that was going on, because last year on spring break, because I'm non-traditional, I went back to school on a running scholarship last year after working the front lines. I do want to emphasize that we have organizations that are really important to promote equity, to promote women empowerment, especially in medicine, because we're in a male-dominated field, obviously. And when the Time's Up healthcare fiasco was going on, many of you started following me because I was really outspoken about the issue. Oftentimes, what happens is that as women, and as women who are, mandatory reporters in the workplace, we also get and we're also inhibiting ourselves from moving forward when we're not supporting other women who have issues in the workplace, when we are silent because we are fearing the backlash, we are fearing whatever it is that we may be risking. Women who have husbands and children and other aspects of what's going on, and they fear what's going to happen. It is a hard space to be in. And I think it's really important for us to be able to find that strength, find that self-respect, find that self-confidence so that we can move forward. the amount of professors that I've had who thought it would be, let's see, oh, well, your work is so excellent. Can we discuss it over lunch? And I mean, that's inappropriate. And you have to call out every instance when that happens. And oftentimes men will back away. And I've learned that. And I just want to give that strength to anyone else here who might need it, to make sure that you adequately announce that is absolutely inappropriate and I won't tolerate it. Just get those words into your head, because I don't know how many times I've used it between medicine or running or track and field or modeling, where you just have to just very clearly and distinctly state, this is inappropriate and I won't tolerate it. Are we good? Okay, great. Let's move forward.
Right. And I should,
That's it.
that comment's fantastic, right? It start as you mean to go on, and it has to start from the moment you enter into this field. If it makes anybody here feel any better, exactly the same in the world of politics, because guess what? Politics is everywhere and certainly alive and well in medicine. Yazan, you had reached out to me through the back channel, letting us know that you wanted to join this conversation. We're happy that you wanted to join and happy that you're here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I just want to make it quick because a lot of people might want to speak. But first, just a message to Uninhibited. Your experience and your skills are very, very much needed in the rural area. So please, before you switch to locums, consider switching to a cash-based practice. You would be extremely surprised of the changes that it might make. During the pandemic, I started hating the things I loved, and I started disliking people, and I started disliking the man I was becoming. And I got on 3 blood pressure medicines. And on November 5th, I stopped taking insurance, and I stopped primary care, and I switched to hormone replacement and Botox and ketamine. And I cannot tell you how much of a difference that made in my life. My health inside and out is better. And I encourage everybody on this forum to not look down on wellness medicine and to not be afraid of starting your own business. It's not easy, it's difficult, it's tricky, but it can be done. So from that, I just want to quickly talk about a possible solution, because that's what we're all about. I mean, we all know what the problem is. Now we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we get out of this quagmire? So Eve actually, she beautifully and brilliantly explained the problem, that basically doctors have become the cash cow of the industry, but society's punching bag, and at the same time devalued to the point of 1/3 to 1/4 of our daily work is simply uncompensated, which is a standard of living and working that no American with 2 degrees would ever accept for themselves. We are the only ones who accept these low standards. So from then, I just want to talk about a possible solution. I think our biggest problem right now as physicians is that we don't have adequate leadership. We don't have real representation in government. Obviously, the American Medical Association does not represent us. Most of the members of that organization are not practicing physicians in the community. And so we need a true representative body so that our voice can actually be heard. And if we don't establish that, we could scream all we want on Twitter, we could use it for catharsis or whatever, nothing is going to change, because the status quo benefits a lot of people, and that's why they don't want it to change. Whenever you want a change in a capitalistic society, you need to make sure that the stakeholders are benefiting. And if you look at the system actually benefits everyone except physicians and patients. Those are the losers. Those are the sore losers of this game. So how do we switch that? I think number one, there needs to be real leadership that represents practicing physicians, not academics, not residents, not pre-med students, represents practicing physicians in the front lines, whether you're a hospitalist or you do outpatient care, whether you're OB-GYN or primary care. We need a body that represents practicing physicians who sees patients on a daily basis. So that's the number one thing that has to be established. Second, we need to understand that the biggest problem happens when you bill a third party. The transaction, the relationship needs to be strictly between the patient and the doctor. There shouldn't be any middlemen in between that. Once you put the middlemen in there, then you lose your value. It's automatic. That's just how it works. So it's important to explain to the public, to explain to our friends and everyone, that what needs to happen is the country needs to have a catastrophic health insurance system that is state-based. That way medical catastrophes are covered. But everything else that is maintenance, that is not life-threatening, that is not truly costly, needs to be maintenance care that is in the free market. We should pay for our healthcare the same way we pay for our gas, for rotating our tires, for our groceries, for our electric bill. It should come out into the free market. When you bring healthcare,
I'm so
yes.
sorry. I was just going to say respectfully, as we're heading towards having 10 minutes left, we have
Perfect. I spoke my piece.
And
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
appreciate your thoughts. I
Thank you.
genuinely do. And thank you for
Thank you,
joining the
guys.
conversation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
We have, thank you. Our next speaker is Chimeras in STEM, and then we will move to Elisa.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining our conversation.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me here, allowing me to speak up. I would like to share having here in the space in the beginning. And yeah, you're completely right about your experience, sharing your experience as a woman. And let's talk about medicine or STEM. And I would like to share my own experience. And it's the same. I'm 3 careers in the STEM, different 3 careers, and having experiences definitely the same is the same experiences and as a doctor and as an engineer right now. So let's say this is something that affects definitely all the women in the STEM career, which is, as you guys mentioned before, male-dominated careers. It definitely it's affect 100% quality of the the way how can we this like involve in our daily basis stuff. So I'm here to support you. I would like to be part of this community. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak up here. And this is currently I'm working on a project to empower women in STEM and to help to build the bridge and help to close the gender gap, the participation, bring awareness, participation of women in the STEM career. So thank you so much for having me here. Allow me to speak.
Well, I want to thank you for joining this conversation. And I followed you, and it sounds like you have some really fantastic work that's happening there. And I think that we are really excited about not only the obviousness of you bringing value in terms of understanding the importance of not just gender equity, but also diversity. And I think that we would love to invite you back as we continue these spaces to let us know more about what you were doing. And I very much honor the fact that you were patient, that you joined the conversation, and that we kept it abbreviated as we're heading toward the top of the hour. So thank you again so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And I would like to welcome Elisa to the conversation. Elisa, thank you for coming back to our space. It's nice to see you again. How are you this evening?
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. Thank all of you. There's so many things that have resonated with me tonight. You know, I think to make it brief, I'm a pediatric electrophysiologist by training. I went through a glorious few years of fellowship where I was respected and was a fantastic experience, to a first job where I was gaslit. I had experiences of gender discrimination, and of course I was a victim of the naivety of contract law. And I think that's been mentioned before. I think it was Shika or Rocky who brought that up, and that's such a big deal. And here I am, after 2018, I went part-time in my clinical practice, and I went into industry, and that took a number of years to get there. And I'm just gonna put this out there as somebody who did this as a matter of my own survival and my own feelings of burnout, my own feelings that part of my skill set was left behind. When I went into medicine, I was a non-science major. I was always in the humanities, and I felt like I needed to do something creative and different. And I think that, I think that we're all desperate right now. And I hear a lot of desperation, and I feel like I'm so sad I'm so grateful that we have this forum, because I just want to offer anyone who's feeling just helpless and they don't know, they know what they want ideally, or maybe they don't exactly, but they certainly don't know the tactics and the strategy to get where they want to be. And I remember that I relied a lot on my non-medical friends, my non-medical connections. And somebody very, very close to me who was working at Oracle at the time out in San Francisco said, "You know what, Elisa, your job is not that different than mine." I'm like, "What are you talking about? You're in enterprise software sales." And, he's like, "The first thing you need to do is build your network. And when you build your network, you build your opportunities. And go on LinkedIn and be shameless." And so, I did. and I met some amazing people, and it didn't always, pan out, but I had some really interesting conversation, and that built into relationships. It built into actual, advisory roles and consultations that I could give, and ultimately got me where I could balance a life where I am mostly in medical device now, but I also still practice. So, there is a pathway for those people who are looking at that. That's not for everyone, and I'm not trying to sell anyone on, my particular story, but I think that there are some ways out of feeling trapped, and I think that it's the most destructive feeling for a highly intelligent, highly driven individual to feel trapped, and the absolute devastation to mental health. And so, anyone on this call who wants to, talk about kind of my experience and where you could go,
Thank you,
I'm really
Elisa.
happy to, yeah, I'm really happy to help.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
I
love
just
the
wanted to
outreach.
jump
Go ahead, Eve.
in
Sure.
and
Mhm.
say thank you. And also I just wanted to point out that the elephant in the room, which is that we are all coming up with we are masters at coming up with workaround for things that aren't working. Like think about how we use our electronic medical record, or how we used to, as residents, like the crazy shit we used to do. Sorry, I'm allowed to say that on spaces. The crazy stuff we used to do, just to sign out, right? And I mean, I think we need to be able to have a healthcare system that doesn't require us to come up with all of these workarounds, but that allows us to shine in doing what we do best, which is taking care of patients. And I feel the same way, Elisa. I mean, I feel that our current system really takes away our creativity, it takes away our passion, and what makes us unique, what really got us to where we are in terms of career success. It's stifled because of things like charting and 20-minute, visits and RVUs, and really don't matter. And I think the opportunity kind of to bring this back to where we started, which is that right now we're in a state of where there couldn't be a greater need for healthcare and for healthcare delivery to people who are sicker than they were 2 years ago, who've gone through a lot more. And it's unbelievable to me that we can't figure out how to best support the scarcest resources, meaning the physicians, the nurses, the all of the people on all the healthcare workers. I mean, we put a man on the moon. Like, we should be able to figure out how to um, design a healthcare system that actually can take care of people. And I think that the tragedy of what's happening right now is we are so understaffed. We are all coming up with ways to survive. So I'm thinking, how can I buy down my time? How can I see less patients? How many more RVUs do I really need to make, or should I just cut my losses so that I'm not miserable for my children? And really, it should be, how can we maximize my potential in my brain and what I bring to the table in a way that all this other stuff doesn't bog me down? And I mean, there's such a story here that is so, we need to get rid of the Band-Aid. Thank you, Jesse Allen, for the word. It's exactly the right word. We need the Band-Aid to come off, and we need to actually just build a better system. And, I encourage everyone here, if you're not part of our movement, if you're not part of Women in Medicine, please join us. We have mentorship, we have sponsorship, we have thought leadership, we have a speakers bureau, we have longitudinal career development programs, we have a research lab. We're really trying to do this work, but right now we're doing this all for free. We are volunteers. We're doing it because we're passionate about it, but we need more passion, and we actually just we need builders. We need to redesign the system. And again, we put a man on the moon, or we can do this. And I wanted to bring it back around, because every single story here is just a survival. And if we're asking, survival has to be number one. Do what you need to do to stay sane and to stay mentally well and to stay healthy and to take care of yourself and your family. But number two, if you do have any space left over, or if we can work together and kind of harness where we align, we need to redesign the system. And we're trying to do that from Women in Medicine, but we really need help.
Yeah,
I
we
just
need
wanted
federal
to
and state elected officials to participate in that as well, because we're going to have
yes.
to completely redesign it. Rocky, go right ahead, please.
I was just going to say one point that Alyssa had made that I just wanted to sort of point out, which she said about building networks to build opportunities. And I think that's really important. So one of the things that we can all do is to sort of really be purposeful and intentional about the curating a diverse network. And that could be, within your field, outside of your field, within your organization, outside of your organization. I think that's, a small thing, but it really has a larger impact, because when you think about it, every person you meet, you then gain access to their network. And as Alyssa mentioned, it may not pan out to some opportunity, but it just gives you a perspective that maybe you don't really have in your sort of own little circle. And so sort of that could be a way to sort of help you when you're either looking for opportunities or trying to navigate sort of challenges within your own workspace. So I really loved the way that you sort of said that, Alyssa, and I just wanted to point that out to other people as just I felt like that was a really key point to sort of think about.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And Lisa, please do come back, and remember our DMs are open and we would love to talk further. And before we wrap up, we do have one more speaker who has been immensely patient. Dr. Schaefer, thank you for sitting here with us through all of these great participants in this discussion. And we appreciate your participation this evening. Thank you for your patience and welcome to the conversation.
Thank you very much. So I want to say that medical knowledge moving very fast. And in oncology, as we probably know, and I finished medical school in 96, it's really moving fast. I graduated, we had about maybe 40 drugs in oncology, and now it's every day. So as a foreign graduate, we have to keep up here in the States with a lot of things. As a mom for 26 years, back in the days, I had to step back as a mom, as a wife, work 1 year as a hospitalist, postpone fellowship. Then after fellowship, I had to join 1 year to be in private practice. Everything else right now, years later, for some reason, this is seen as a gap in my CV. So with all information we discussed that now in a clinic and serving in IRB, national, international committees, running, precision oncology, it's really found out that we work so much on daily basis. We have to spend so much time as a physicians, basically going through the charts, see how smarter we can work, speak with insurance companies, how faster, and it basically we just have to scream louder and louder. What I found out as an oncologist and as a mom 26 years ago, I had to run. It was, finishing medical school and basically run and feed my child and back and forth. And today, 26 years later, I see the same problem. It means nothing really changed. So a lot of discrepancy I start seeing in terms of we start working during COVID long hours, working in double mask. It's difficult to enroll patients in clinical trials. Less patients coming from rural area and a vast majority of patients actually for clinical trials who qualify in rural area. So that's seeing big gap. All of a sudden, my dad passed away in August and last year. And as I was standing at the cemetery, I and watching him buried, I had this awakening moment. And I was thinking, why everything is happening? I received close to 100 messages. I received so much backup after I came back from the funeral. I was basically buried in charts, in work, in committees, and everything. So my question, how can we join forces and how can we change? Because after this awakening moment, I actually resigned. In December, as an oncologist, double board certified, serving in multiple committees, I went to work as a locum just this month since end of December, beginning January. I got offer in industry and offer a contract. And after I told that I have to go see my mom for a couple of weeks, actually it was no. So I figured out that we basically jumped from one problem to another problem. So I would like to address everyone that, yes, right now I feel that I'm a deficient. I went to work as a locum with all my experience, but I never was really able to speak because I'm not part of the tribe. I came from the country with a 9 million population. I've been here 20 years. I don't have connections from high school or residency. So people start inviting me on social media, and now I start speak about this. And now I strongly urge all of us join forces. And if someone feels like me outside the tribe, I want to bring everyone together. How we can not scream louder, but rather work together. So I really appreciate for this time, and I hope to connect with everyone. Thank you.
Stephanie, I just want to add one comment to that because I think it's really an important point that was made. One thing that's really important, you need to remember, everybody, you get asked and voluntold to be on committees and things. We don't need to be doing that work. We feel an obligation to do it. And I am the worst person to say no. I am encouraging everybody on this call. If you've been assigned to like 20 committees, if you're the one who's like moving the institution forward, but you're not getting recognition for it, you're not getting the leadership opportunities, say no. Say no to committees, say no to things that are not giving you a return on investment, whether it's financial or whether it's in your career. If it's taking you away from things that you need to move forward, you need to figure out a way to say no. And on all these equity equity committees, all these women's task forces, all of these things that are happening. We don't just need women, and especially people who pay double and triple taxes, like women of color. We don't need people with intersectional identities to be the only ones who are constantly lifting this burden and being on these committees. If you've been suggested or asked to be on a committee that you do not have the time for, you sponsor someone else. And by sponsor someone else, I say you ask a man and say, hey, I was asked to be a part of this women's networking task force. I think we need more male voices. We need he for she allies. You should do this. And then volunteer other individuals who you think don't get volunteered for these types of opportunities. So we as women often say yes to a lot of things because we know it's for the greater good, and we end up sacrificing our own careers, our own health, our own professional and personal lives. So my challenge to everybody on this space, and for the message for you to pass on to your friends and colleagues, is start saying no to things that don't give you a benefit, that don't give you any joy, that don't help your patients, that don't feel your passion, that don't give you a return on investment, and give those opportunities to other people who need those opportunities for their own personal and professional development, and also to move the system, because we're not going to move the system if only one small group of people is constantly the one on all of these committees and in all of these movements. We need everybody working together. So that's my one piece of advice to everybody on this space tonight.
Oh, Shika, that was so important. That was so important. I mean, for all of you that are burned out, for Dr. Schaefer, who literally, I mean, here you are with this incredible specialty that is so needed, and for your own survival had to make the decision you do. I mean, this is where this is headed. Our system was broken before COVID. It really broke during COVID. We couldn't even figure out how to vaccinate adults across the United States. We didn't have enough people. I mean, think about this. We are in trouble. And women do bring a certain special difference, I think, to the mix. And this is what needs to be so important. So Shika, thank you for that. And we do have one more speaker, and I would love to invite Dr. Sharma. Thank you for joining the conversation. Would love to hear your comments, and we are going to wrap up another great episode of Women in Medicine. Dr. Sharma, welcome. Dr. Sharma, in case you don't know, you are on mute. We would love to hear what you have to say.
Sorry about that.
You're fine.
Yeah. No, I actually just wanted to say that I think I've been hearing a lot about about women in medicine and how we need to speak up. I actually want to just acknowledge that we do speak up. And I want to acknowledge that we speak up, we speak out. We are then used with words such as we're aggressive, we're loud, we're angry, we're being drama. And really, I really want to just state that as a person who has been gaslit and also sea lions in my career, that I think it's really the thing that I get very disappointed by are the amount of men that I adore and respect and admire who actually stay silent and are complicit when you have a lot of misogynistic leaders who are really doing the gaslighting and the sea lining towards us, and they stay silent. And when they stay silent, complicit. And so I don't think the burden is on us as women. I think the burden is on the men and the people in power who ascribe to being cis men or not cis men. But the point is it's really important that they're a part of the allyship, because at the end of the day, we do speak up. We do it all the time. And so, communities like Women in Medicine and communities of being able to create collectives for ourselves. But I am challenging the men that stand by us and tell us, in private, oh, he shouldn't have done that. I don't want you to tell me that in private. I want you to go and stand up to that person and tell them that what they're doing is wrong. And, because they're also afraid of losing their job, that to me is more of a coward move. And I say this about men that I adore, admire, and respect, who I work with very closely, but they are the reasoning of that complicitness. And so I've been hearing a lot about women saying we need to speak up, but I would argue that we do all the time. And so I just put misogyny up in front, and I'm asking for the men who are listening and the men who work with other men who are in positions of power to stand up and show up for us, because we're exhausted. Thank you.
Yes,
Woo!
thank you. That was amazing. We are exhausted, and and I'm reposting our allyship program for male inclusive leadership. That we're hearing a lot of comments like, well, we're already allies, or why would we pay to do this program? Or why should we invest in this? What's in it for us? And the truth be told, it is a skill set that is obviously not already present, not already taught, because we are having this conversation today, here and now. And so it is not a criticism. We know we have allies. We are so appreciative, but we need to take the next step. We need for people who are at the table, who are in the room already, to be advocating on our behalf, so that things like the stories that we're sharing tonight, or the stories of feeling gassy, the ongoing gender gap in pay and promotion, the ongoing, loss of talent from the workforce, that this is it's an end, and we are so far from that. And it is not a bad thing to say this is something that we need to cultivate and intentionally teach the skills. And we as women who basically what you just said, like we've created this and designed this program for men on how to do it. And but we need people to show up and take the next step, and to learn how to really be our allies, because we can't do this alone, and we shouldn't have to do this alone, and we are exhausted, and we're not going to do it alone. And so I think, for the sake of healthcare and for the sake of the future of medicine, we really need to all be on the same page here. And I really appreciate your comments and your kind of pointing out the fact that it should not be the burden should not be on those who are advocating for our own self-worth over and over. We shouldn't have to prove our own self-worth every time we speak up. It should really be coming from our allies and from our colleagues.
Thank you, Eve. I appreciate that. And as we do start to head towards wrap up, Rocky and Shika, I would love to hear from you and any information you would like to share about women in medicine, how people can join forces with women in medicine. And then also, you have a summit coming up in September. So the degree that you want to share some of that information too, kind of wrap up, and then any additional information you'd like to share. And then we're going to look forward to episode 2. So please, let's go ahead and do the wrap up.
I'm going to let Shika talk more about the Women in Medicine Summit, but I wanted to just sort of maybe have like a couple of takeaways. So I would say, some really important points were brought up in terms of the gender stereotyping, and a couple of our speakers tonight talked a lot about sort of that double bind that women experience. So if a male acts in a certain way, they're described as being assertive, whereas women are aggressive. If a male is really decisive and makes a decision quickly, they're seen, again, in a positive light, whereas women are seen as being making rash decisions or being overly emotional and not really thinking things through. So I think, there's a few things in terms of breaking down those gender stereotypes and really deconstructing that sort of model of the male being that leader, and what means when someone thinks about who a leader is, taking out, it's just, we don't need to think about just as a male being that leader. And then really, I know we talked a lot about just sort of the advocacy work. We can't do it alone. I think men need to be our allies in this. Again, as I mentioned earlier, that they are really in the majority of leadership roles. And I think a lot of men do want to help, and sometimes they don't know how to help. And they're nervous or scared on sort of being able to speak up. And I think that's where sort of some of that training comes in, and to really give them the words to use, sort of getting them more comfortable in the space, and sort of giving them that voice to be able to help us out as well. And then really helping them, make those policies and procedure changes, those climate changes that I talked about. Because I think that's really where we need to sort of head, is really not just us speaking up in our own little area, but really making those changes, as Stephanie mentioned, that, getting those people in those political spaces, in our leadership at the highest levels, to make those changes. So I'm going to end with that.
Thank you, Rocky. Shika.
Yeah. So first, I want to thank everybody for joining us today for this space, because I'm just so excited that Stephanie has been able to create this space for women in medicine. And even Rocky, thank you for being amazing co-hosts today. So there's a lot of questions and a lot of people ask about women in medicine. So we are a nonprofit, and we do have a summit that's coming up in the fall, September 16th and 17th. It will hopefully be in person in Chicago at the Drake Hotel, as long as COVID doesn't throw another wrench in the plan. So if you're free and available, we'd love to see you in Chicago in September. But I think, the more up and quick things that are coming up, Eve mentioned the allyship programming. And again, this is not supposed to be a marketing space. This is not something that we're out here telling you, register up, give us money. This is something where we've created content with these amazing males who actually do these courses in the corporate world. And a lot of what happens in the corporate world hasn't transferred over to medicine yet. We have these hierarchical structures that have been based in years and years and years of tradition. And it's time for us to really look deeply into a system that was built when women were not the majority of the healthcare workforce. So we're at a point now where we need to really disrupt our healthcare workforce. We need to change the way our system is set up. And in order to do that, we need men leading the charge. As Manisha said so expertly, we are exhausted, and we are the ones who are doing all the work, and that is not okay. So we created programming like the Leadership Lab to really move the needle and get the men who really care about doing this work and who really care about creating equitable work environments, to teach them and to show them skill sets in how to be effective in leadership, and also in inclusive leadership. Because in order to be successful in 2022 and beyond, you need to be an inclusive leader. It's just the way it is. It's the way the world is going. And we have a program that literally teaches men how to be that leader and how to be successful. So I just want to end by saying if anyone is interested in getting involved in women in medicine or coming to the summit or learning more about any of our programming, we also have a Women in Medicine Speakers Bureau. So if you're a woman in any aspect of healthcare and you're interested in thought leadership opportunities, we just launched our Speakers Bureau. There's a lot of ways to get involved with women in medicine. You can reach out to me or Rocky or Eve. We'd all be happy to talk to you and connect you to wherever space you'd like to be connected to. But at the end of the day, we're really about community building. We're really about making a difference. And we really care about this. We're very mission driven. And at the end of the day, my goal is to leave the healthcare system better when I leave it than it is now or when I entered it. And so I think we all have the same mission, and we would love for all of you to come on that journey with us. So in whatever capacity, whether it's just following us on social media or whether it's getting more actively engaged, we love everybody who engages with us in any capacity at all, even if it's just to give us a shout out every now and then. So please feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to connect you with people, to talk to you, to help you achieve your goals, because when one of us succeeds, we all succeed, and we're all about lifting as you rise. That's kind of our thing in Women in Medicine. So thanks for joining us tonight. And Stephanie, thank you for being such a phenomenal moderator and host. You really are amazing, and you should have your own TV show.
Well, Shika, listen, I just want to say to Eve, to Rocky, to Shika, it is my ongoing honor to be asked to help you in this way. I'm passionate about what you do. And as we wrap up towards the end of this evening, I want to thank everybody who has been on stage with us participating in this conversation. For those of you that have stayed in the audience and listened, we know that everybody is exhausted and there are a lot of decisions you could be making tonight, but you chose to spend this time with us, and we are honored by that. I also want to encourage you to offer some feedback through direct message here on Twitter. If you have enjoyed these spaces, if you're finding these valuable and beneficial, if there are certain topics that you are really wondering about or expertise we can bring to the table to have in these spaces, in these conversations, we would love some of that feedback. That offer is not based on promises, it's based on hope that we can continue to amplify the voices of women in medicine, continue to inform what these challenges are, and to continue to inform and provide you data as to the benefit of women being in medicine, equal gender pay, losing some of that gender gap, and making sure that we are offering the best patient experiences, the best colleague experiences, and offering physicians a way to survive physicianing, because this is an untenable path that we are on, and our healthcare professionals are breaking. And so from me to all of you, I want you to know many of us out here are very, very grateful, and we see you and we hear you and we appreciate you. So everybody, please have a good rest of your evening. Hang out with people who love you and that you love back. Take care of yourself. Listen to some of the advice given here tonight. Self-care needs to be absolutely positively number one. And if there are things you are doing that you find meaningful and they're important, keep going. But for those that are not necessary, drop it. Go get your toes in the sand, stick your feet in the dirt, and take deep breaths. This is self-care time. So thank you again for joining us for another episode 2 of Women in Medicine here on Twitter Spaces, as we discussed the Great Resignation and certainly more to come. And be well, everybody. So grateful you joined us. We will see you, I think, maybe next week. Follow us on Twitter and we'll let you know. Take care, everybody.
Created this and designed this program for men on how to do it, and but we need people to show up and take the next step and to learn how to really be our allies, because we can't do this alone, and we shouldn't have to do this alone, and we are exhausted, and we're not going to do it alone. And so I think, for the sake of healthcare and for the sake of the future of medicine, we really need to all be on the same page here. And I really appreciate your comments and your kind of pointing out the fact that it should not be the burden should not be on those who are advocating for our own self-worth over and over. We shouldn't have to prove our own self-worth every time we speak up. It should really be coming from our allies and from our colleagues.
Thank you, Eve. I appreciate that. And as we do start to head towards wrap up, Rocky and Shika, I would love to hear from you and any information you would like to share about women in medicine, how people can join forces with women in medicine. And then also, you have a summit coming up in September. So the degree that you want to share some of that information too, kind of wrap up, and then any additional information you'd like to share. And then we're going to look forward to episode 2. So please, let's go ahead and do the wrap up.
I'm going to let Shika talk more about the Women in Medicine Summit, but I wanted to just sort of maybe have like a couple of takeaways. So I would say, some really important points were brought up in terms of the gender stereotyping, and a couple of our speakers tonight talked a lot about sort of that double bind that women experience. So if a male acts in a certain way, they're described as being assertive, whereas women are aggressive. if a male is really decisive and makes a decision quickly, they're seen, again, in a positive light, whereas women are seen as being making rash decisions or being overly emotional and not really thinking things through. So I think, there's a few things in terms of breaking down those gender stereotypes and really deconstructing that sort of model of the male being that leader, and what and means when someone thinks about who a leader is, taking out, it's just, we don't need to think about just as a male being that leader. And then really, I know we talked a lot about just sort of the advocacy work. We can't do it alone. I think men need to be our allies in this. Again, as I mentioned earlier, that they are really in the majority of leadership roles. And I think a lot of men do want to help, and sometimes they don't know how to help. And they're nervous, they're scared on sort of being able to speak up. And I think that's where sort of some of that training comes in, and to really give them the words to use, sort of getting them more comfortable in the space and sort of giving them that voice to be able to help us out as well. And then really helping them, make those policies and procedure changes, those climate changes that I talked about. Because I think that's really where we need to sort of head, is really not just us speaking up in our own little area, but really making those changes, as Stephanie mentioned, that, getting those people in those political spaces, in our leadership at the highest levels to make those changes. So I'm going to end with that.
Thank you, Rocky. Shika.
Yeah, so first I want to thank everybody for joining us today for this space, because I'm just so excited that Stephanie has been able to create this space for women in medicine. And even Rocky, thank you for being amazing co-hosts today. So there's a lot of questions and a lot of people ask about women in medicine. So we are a nonprofit, and we do have a summit that's coming up in the fall, September 16th and 17th. It will hopefully be in person in Chicago at the Drake Hotel, as long as COVID doesn't throw another wrench in the plan. So if you're free and available, we'd love to see you in Chicago in September. But I think, the more up and quick things that are coming up, Eve mentioned the allyship programming. And again, this is not supposed to be a marketing space. This is not something that we're out here telling you, register up, give us money. This is something where we've created content with these amazing males who actually do these courses in the corporate world. And a lot of what happens in the corporate world hasn't transferred over to medicine yet. We have these hierarchical structures that have been based in years and years and years of tradition. And it's time for us to really look deeply into a system that was built when women were not the majority of the healthcare workforce. So we're at a point now where we need to really disrupt our healthcare workforce. We need to change the way our system is set up. And in order to do that, we need men leading the charge. As Manisha said so expertly, we are exhausted and we are the ones who are doing all the work, and that is not okay. So we created programming like the Leadership Lab to really move the needle and get the men who really care about doing this work and who really care about creating equitable work environments, to teach them and to show them skill sets in how to be effective in leadership, and also in inclusive leadership. Because in order to be successful in 2022 and beyond, you need to be an inclusive leader. It's just the way it is. It's the way the world is going. And we have a program that literally teaches men how to be that leader and how to be successful. So I just want to end by saying, if anyone is interested in getting involved in women in medicine or coming to the summit or learning more about any of our programming, we also have a Women in Medicine Speakers Bureau. So if you're a woman in any aspect of healthcare and you're interested in thought leadership opportunities, we just launched our Speakers Bureau. There's a lot of ways to get involved with women in medicine. You can reach out to me or Rocky or Eve. We'd all be happy to talk to you and connect you to wherever space you'd like to be connected to. But at the end of the day, we're really about community building. We're really about making a difference. And we really care about this. We're very mission driven. And at the end of the day, my goal is to leave the healthcare system better when I leave it than it is now or when I entered it. And so I think we all have the same mission, and we would love for all of you to come on that journey with us. So in whatever capacity, whether it's just following us on social media or whether it's getting more actively engaged, we love everybody who engages with us in any capacity at all, even if it's just to give us a shout out every now and then. So please feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to connect you with people, to talk to you, to help you achieve your goals, because when one of us succeeds, we all succeed, and we're all about lifting as you rise. That's kind of our thing in Women in Medicine. So thanks for joining us tonight. And Stephanie, thank you for being such a phenomenal moderator and host. You really are amazing, and you should have your own TV show.
Well, Shika, listen, I just want to say to Eve, to Rocky, to Shika, it is my ongoing honor to be asked to help you in this way. I'm passionate about what you do. And as we wrap up towards the end of this evening, I want to thank everybody who has been on stage with us, participating in this conversation. For those of you that have stayed in the audience and listened, we know that everybody is exhausted and there are a lot of decisions you could be making tonight, but you chose to spend this time with us, and we are honored by that. I also want to encourage you to offer some feedback through direct message here on Twitter. If you have enjoyed these spaces, if you're finding these valuable and beneficial, if there are certain topics that you are really wondering about or expertise we can bring to the table to have in these spaces, in these conversations, we would love some of that feedback. That offer is not based on promises, it's based on hope that we can continue to amplify the voices of women in medicine, continue to inform what these challenges are, and to continue to inform and provide you data as to the benefit of women being in medicine, equal gender pay, losing some of that gender gap, and making sure that we are offering the best patient experiences, the best colleague experiences, and offering physicians a way to survive physicianing, because this is an untenable path that we are on, and our healthcare professionals are breaking. And so from me to all of you, I want you to know, many of us out here are very, very grateful, and we see you and we hear you and we appreciate you. So everybody, please have a good rest of your evening. Hang out with people who love you and that you love back. Take care of yourself. Listen to some of the advice given here tonight. Self-care needs to be absolutely positively number one. And if there are things you are doing that you find meaningful and they're important, keep going. But for those that are not necessary, drop it. Go get your toes in the sand, stick your feet in the dirt, and take deep breaths. This is self-care time. So thank you again for joining us for another episode 2 of Women in Medicine here on Twitter Spaces, as we discussed the Great Resignation, and certainly more to come. And be well, everybody. So grateful you joined us. We will see you, I think, maybe next week. Follow us on Twitter and we'll let you know. Take care, everybody. People who love you and that you love back. Take care of yourself. Listen to some of the advice given here tonight. Self-care needs to be absolutely positively number one. And if there are things you are doing that you find meaningful and they're important, keep going. But for those that are not necessary, drop it. Go get your toes in the sand, stick your feet in the dirt, and take deep breaths. This is self-care time. So thank you again for joining us for another episode 2 of Women in Medicine here on Twitter Spaces, as we discussed the Great Resignation, and certainly more to come. And be well, everybody. So grateful you joined us. We will see you, I think, maybe next week. Follow us on Twitter and we'll let you know. Take care, everybody.